Okay, welcome and good evening, everyone, to the Planning Commission meeting of November 14th, 2018. Roll call, please.
Chair Kurth?
Here.
Vice Chair Porter?
Here.
Commissioner Marsh?
Here.
Commissioner Huber? Commissioner Dew?
Present.
Next, if you please rise for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Dew. Lord, we come to you in thankfulness for the opportunities and the freedoms that this country offers. We ask for your guidance and your blessing over this meeting so that the decisions that are made are in the best interest of this city and our citizens. We also ask that you bless those affected in California of the wildfires. Amen.
For the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a set of minutes to approve.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Dew with a second by Vice Chair Porter to approve the minutes of the October 17th, 2018 special meeting of the Planning Commission. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. We'll start out with agenda item number 1, and before we take the staff report, I would like to make a disclosure that I had talked to this applicant today. This applicant had given me a call. Applicant wanted me to make sure that I was in receipt of the staff report and kind of went through it and want to know if I had any questions, which I did not. Number 1, staff report, please.
Thank you, Chairman Kurth, fellow commissioners. Item number 1 is case PLAN 18-00033. It is a municipal code amendment with a environmental exemption to conditionally allow movie theaters to sell alcohol beverages for on-site consumption, and a conditional use permit with an environmental exemption to allow for the sale of beer and wine in conjunction with the theater operations at the Mall of Victor Valley Cinemark Theater. The code amendment would apply citywide for any movie theater that would propose to sell alcohol. And then the conditional use permit before you today is specifically for the mall at 14400 Bear Valley Road. The applicant, Cinemark Theaters, is requesting this to sell alcoholic beverages. This is just beer and wine. It would be a Type 41 license from the Department of Alcohol Beverages, considered a bona fide eating establishment similar to a restaurant. They're requesting this to sell alcohol between the hours of 10 a.m. and 1 a.m. This is part of a growing trend that we've seen in the industry in recent years. to sell alcohol beverages in conjunction with expanded concession menu and also plush reclining seating to maximize the movie-going experience. Back in December of 2017 and again in February of this year, staff brought forward a discussion item related to this issue of selling alcohol at theaters. Since our code didn't address the issue, we only allow for alcohol sales for on-site consumption within a restaurant setting to be considered a bona fide eating establishment. So this code amendment would clarify that. If the commission so chooses to recommend approval of the code amendment, it would clarify the allowance for theaters to have alcoholic beverage sales. At that meeting or prior meeting, there was a consensus from the commission to explore the code amendment further. So the applicant recently submitted this application that's before you today. There are several issues that were brought up at the February meeting, so it's worth discussing further. What we've provided here you today is some more information on our sheriff's department. They did give us some feedback. They also provide services to Apple Valley and Hesperia, which have theaters that sell alcohol, and they Captain Schuler at the time mentioned that it has not translated into additional calls for service to the sheriff's department at those other communities. We've also reached out to the mall management. They lease the property, the theater leases from the mall, and they don't have any issue with it, but they may need to discuss different security measures throughout the mall. With that, staff has presented you some options for consideration, either option to deny, not to recommend approval of the code amendment. Option B would be to propose a code amendment that only allows beer and wine without the availability to do distilled spirits. And then option C would allow beer, wine, and distilled spirits, even though the applicant in their conditional use permit request here is only asking for beer and wine. So this would leave the code amendment would allow other theaters to come forward and ask for beer, wine, and distilled spirits, even though this applicant's only asking for beer and wine. What we found in the industry and the trend is that it's about 50-50. 50% of the establishments only are requesting the beer and wine, while some of the other ones would like the distilled spirits. So if the code amendment is adopted, we wanted to give that option there to put in the code for the allowance of the distilled spirits. So both option B and C that allow for this code amendment to move forward include operating standards, and those are included in your report. Mainly goes over basic standards for how to sell. That would only be sold from a concession stand within the theater. They would be limited to canisters that are 16 ounces or less. They'd have to differ from the beverages that they sell to a normal soda pop. So it would have to be a distinction between the two beverage containers. It would also require that employees would monitor the theaters no less than 30 minutes apart to make sure that everyone's conducting themselves properly. There's also a requirement, obviously, to identify, but also to require that the person buying a alcoholic beverage would have a valid movie ticket at the same time. Also requirement for lead certification so that the people serving the alcoholic beverages are properly trained. No exterior signs of alcohol beverages would be allowed. No signs that dictate that the alcoholic beverages can't go beyond a certain point outside of the establishment. No happy hour allowances, and also consumption by other employees would be prohibited. Also, we wanted to include for the Commission's consideration additional operating standards. Now, this isn't what the applicant's proposing. It has been done in other communities. It's a little bit more restrictive, but I'll leave that to the Commission to see if it's pertinent or not. But that would include a wristband identification program where the person buying an alcoholic beverage would be wristbanded after they've been checked their ID. And then there would also be a limitation up to 3 alcohol beverages for that particular person who's been wristbanded. And would also limit the sale of alcohol up to midnight. Currently, the proposal would allow it up to 1 a.m. is what the applicant's requesting. So with that information, we're available if you have any questions. Again, this is just a recommendation to the City Council, but it does start with the Planning Commission. So I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of staff at this point?
Chairman? I'd like to ask, is the applicant here? Are they here in the audience anywhere? Could you come? Thank you. Thank you for being here this evening.
Should I open up the public hearing if we've got?
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So I'll declare the public hearing open, and go ahead. No problem.
You know, last time we met, I had asked you 3 questions. And having alcohol, was it due to a trend? And staff indicated there is a trend. I also asked, was there a demand? And I also wanted to know something regarding profit. So could you expound on those 3 things for me, please?
I certainly can. Again, for the record, my name is Steve Rawlings, and I'm here on behalf of Cinemark Century Movie Theaters. Also with me this evening is Matt Dunn, who works for Cinemark USA, that oversees the National Alcohol Program. And we do have a little bit, some comments there, but I'll address yours directly there. Yes, it is, certainly it is a very, very large trend. I brought with me a list of all of the movie theaters, well, I shouldn't say all of them, but of the major movie theater chains in California, the Cinemarks, the Centuries, the Regal, the Edwards, the AMCs, et cetera, those types of companies. I actually brought for you guys tonight a list of all of the licenses that right off the ABC website, and it approximates around 150, and mind you, I left off some of the smaller movie theater chains, but I included all of the major movie theater chains. Currently, there's roughly around 150 plus movie theaters that are very similar in nature to the movie theater here in your community that are actively selling alcohol. Some are beer and wine only. Some of them are beer, wine, and spirits. And as your staff pointed out, it's about a 50-50 there. Nationwide, this is also occurring nationwide. Century currently we have 26, I think, of our locations in California presently licensed in the state of California. And forgive me, I say Century and Cinemark sometimes. They're one and the same company. I believe that this theater here, we operate under the Cinemark name, so forgive me if I confuse anybody by that. And then nationwide, we're 145 locations nationally, and 26 of those being here in California. And the other movie theater chains, the larger ones, the Regal Entertainment Group, the AMCs, their numbers are somewhat similar. They're nationwide, that they're putting this in many other states also. So that's a little bit on the trend there. In terms of the demand, typically we find that about 10% of the adults that come to the movies will actually make that purchase of alcoholic beverages. That number ranges. Sometimes on a Friday evening there might be a few more folks, but it's going to be somewhere in the 10 to 20% range of people that will actually make that purchase. 10% of that percentage will make a purchase of a secondary alcoholic beverage. We do believe that there is the demand. That is a rather significant percentage of folks there. and I'll get into some more details about, trends within the industry. And then in terms of profit, obviously we operate with some overhead. Yes, these average in the 20 cents per person type of revenues. Yeah, 25 to 27 cents on average is what's spent on alcoholic beverage for guests. Obviously, a certain guest is spending the $6 or $8, but if you spread that out over everybody, it represents 25 cents roughly in terms of revenues. That answered your question. I did have some, comments. Obviously, if you guys would like to ask some questions, I could do that. But I did have some comments and some additional presentation materials if you guys would like to hear that first, or if you want to ask questions, either way you'd like to do it.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I would prefer to listen to his comments and his presentation, and then
I was
if
going to
we can have a
suggest if
follow-up.
the commission's okay, you can go ahead with your presentation, and then if there's any
Thank you.
questions.
Okay, terrific.
Sorry about that.
I like the drum roll.
We were warned earlier that there has been some technical difficulties with these microphones at like the last city council meeting, and they're working on it. So we apologize for the annoyance.
Okay, well, terrific. We were here in February, and thank you so much for taking the time to hold the workshop, if you would, and letting us have an opportunity to participate in that. I don't want to be completely redundant, but some of the what's really driving this request for alcohol sales at movie theaters is kind of a nationwide phenomena. The home theater market is causing a lot of people to stay home. Every one of us in this room probably has a big flat screen TV mounted up to a wall, and we might have a Netflix account, we might have an Amazon Fire Stick. If you are at all technologically savvy, you can jailbreak your Amazon Fire Stick, and you can be watching movies that are in the movie theaters right now, right at your home, and you can hit the pause button when you need to go to the restroom, and so on and so forth, and you can enjoy an alcoholic beverage while you're sitting on your sofa. That's a phenomenon, but it appears to be a trend, and we all can, from our own experience, understand that, that's putting some strains on the, what has been the traditional movie theater business, because no longer do we necessarily have a monopoly on the content, but what we do have is we have a great experience. And through this trend where the home theater industry is kind of impacting the business, it's kind of forcing all of the movie theater companies to kind of what we call up their game. They need to be able to provide a better experience that's going to cause you and your family to come out of the house and spend the money on the movie ticket and buy some concessions. And the concessions at every movie theater is much better than it used to be. It's not just popcorn and nachos any longer. You can buy really much better food there. And, we're investing more money in our seating. And, of course, in part and parcel with that is we'd like the opportunity to be able to sell, a little bit of beer and wine, because some people would like to be able to just simply purchase a glass of wine and enjoy the movie while they're having a glass of wine. It is intended solely to be a luxury amenity to the patrons that are coming out that would like to have that beverage there. We're not looking to change the character of our business whatsoever. In fact, we're trying to hold on to our business, and we're being forced to be by having to kind of up our game. And it's been it's been good for the industry in some respects because the experience is getting better and better for the customers. So that's a little bit of the background as to what's really driving this, and it's driving it nationwide. There have been some theaters closing in smaller communities because just simply you're just not getting the foot traffic that you used to get. A lot of people don't realize that there's a revenue share on the box office ticket sales. You'll hear these big numbers about a big weekend at the box office and so on and so forth, but the movie theaters only get a percentage of those ticket sales. If you get a big blockbuster out there like Star Wars, they probably command, 70% or more? Yeah, for the opening weeks for a big blockbuster like a Star Wars, the movie production company is going to keep about 90% of those ticket sales. And if you don't agree to it, then they don't play the movie in your movie theaters. And then obviously as movie's been playing longer in your theater, the percentages change. So our revenue models at a traditional movie theater company is really dependent upon, concession sales. Because again, there's a big revenue split, and some of the revenue splits are very one-sided toward the production houses. So that's part of, the whole program, or why this alcohol sales has started to occur, is because of some of those, issues that are facing the movie theater industry in general. A couple of other, points I'd like to make is that the movie theater industry worked very, very closely with ABC. ABC went ahead and piloted a couple of movie theaters to be able to, sell alcoholic beverages, but I'm going clear back into about, I think, 2008, or 2009. And they piloted that for a couple of years, and then finally in about 2012 or 13, ABC decided that, hey, we could place these types of controls in there, and we would feel comfortable that this would be an okay environment or an okay venue to be able to sell alcoholic beverages. And again, that was a pilot program that lasted about 3 to 4 years before they felt comfortable, and they tinkered around with conditions and so on and so forth. And in 2012, they kind of amended their policies a little bit, and that allowed for the major movie theater companies to be able to offer it here in the state of California. And since about 2012 or 2013, roughly, now there's, like I said, roughly over 150 movie theaters, very similar to this movie theater, that are selling alcohol. And in terms of, reported issues, I think that your staff had mentioned that your sheriff's department has taken a look at this. There's 2 working case scenarios. One is over in Hesperia. They've been selling, I looked up their license, they've been selling alcoholic beverages since about 2014. Their license was issued in March of 2014. And then the Cinemark, we opened up a location in Apple Valley. And we've been licensed at that location for about 1 year right now. And those are 2 that are obviously very close to your communities. And as far as we can tell, there hasn't been any types of incidences on that. I believe all those communities contract with the sheriff's department, so they had access to all of the information, and they're not seeing any particular issues that are of great concern. They haven't seen increased calls of service to either of those locations. With that, one of the other things about the industry that I think is worth pointing out is ABC has placed some kind of controls on licenses. If you don't have to go through a conditional use permit process and you're eligible to go right to the ABC, they will place conditions on your licenses that are issued to a movie theater that are different than what they might place on a restaurant and so on and so forth. And some of those have been articulated in the operating standards that are being proposed here, such as, monitoring of your auditoriums, how many drinks a person can purchase at the same time, size of containers, and so on and so forth. And I point that out because the movie theater companies have actually taken a lot of those a step further and implemented some of their own internal policies because, again, they aren't looking to create any problems for themselves. So they're willing to place some controls, such as limitation on drinks, the number of drinks you can come and get there, which is vastly different than, say, even like a Chuck E. Cheese, where at a Chuck E. Cheese they can get a license and there's no limitations on how many pitchers of beer somebody can order while they're at Chuck E. Cheese. And I point out Chuck E. Cheese because I know it's in the same shopping center there, and they have all 85 of their locations in the state of California with alcohol licenses. So my point on that is you've got operators, a community of movie theaters that are looking to enhance their experience by offering this amenity, that have voluntarily placed controls on themselves to make sure it doesn't become a problem, A, for themselves, and B, for the community. But it's a amenity that there is a lot of demand for, and it's a trend. And if you're a theater company not offering that, people will seek out other alternatives there. In this particular case, I believe that both the movie theaters in Apple Valley and in Hesperia are only 5 or 6 miles away from this particular location. So with that, we originally had thought about doing this as a beer, wine, and distilled spirits location. But we came to the meeting and we got a little bit of feedback, and we went back and we thought about it a little bit and said, you know what, this is new to your community, and so I appreciate the looking very hard at what's going on here. I do genuinely appreciate that. And we decided that it would probably be best if we just simply proposed to do beer and wine at this location so that, the community could get an opportunity to view it and not offer the distilled spirits. Later on, if the ordinance is amenable to it, maybe then later choose to add distilled spirits. But at that point in time, everybody's going to have an opportunity to see the operation. But we did pull that back, and we decided we would just propose to do beer and wine. So the option 2 that was presented to you is something that's acceptable to us, beer and wine. That is kind of what we're proposing to do there. I know that Scott had drafted out. There's some other additional conditions that you folks might want to consider, and I've reviewed those and talked them over with your staff a little bit, and we're certainly amenable to try to make something work that gives you guys the comfort level that this is going to be an okay operation, and that allows us to introduce this product to our offering there. So with that, I wanted to mention one other thing, and I'm going to have Matt just kind of expand upon this a little bit too. We've also invested, and on this particular location, we're going to have card readers that we're going to purchase. They're a couple $1,000, so this isn't cheap, but that's the ID reader that we'll do. It actually stores your information, and so we can tell when the last time you came in and purchased a drink, so that we can monitor activity. Because certainly, like anybody else, we're concerned with, hey, if you come out and you buy a drink, and then a couple minutes later you come back out and, hey, that was pretty quick. What happened to that beverage? Those are the types of things that we do monitor internally. For the most part, alcoholic beverages are purchased. People take them into the auditorium. They'll take whatever length of time. It'll take them 20 or 30 minutes to sip on their beverage. And not typically do they come back out for a second beverage. It does happen from time to time, but really the only real reason any one of us ever leaves the auditorium is because we have to use the restroom typically, but not very frequently do we get people coming back out. So with that, Matt, maybe you can tell them a little bit more about the card scanning system and anything else that I missed. I appreciate it.
My name is Matt Dunn. I'm with Cinemark USA, and thanks again for your time tonight. We really appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you guys. To add a little bit to what Steve said, he's covered the majority of the broad strokes, just to add some fine points. We do have the ID scanners, and those are used for everybody on every purchase all the time. So for our locations, we have a new policy that's going in actually as the first of this year, where every transaction of alcoholic beverage sales requires an ID regardless of age. So we used to do it if you appeared under the age of 40. We're taking the guesswork out of it, and we're just requiring it across the board with every alcoholic transaction or beverage transaction. What that allows us to do is our ID scanners, they do save data, but they only save data for 24 hours, and then it automatically erases every night at 4 o'clock in the morning. But what it does is it keeps a timestamp of every time that ID was scanned. So in our system, it will show if you purchased a beverage 10 minutes ago or 15 minutes ago or an hour ago, so that we can have a good idea of how often you're purchasing any sort of alcoholic beverages. And if there is what we call frequent purchasing, the bartender or bar alcohol service employee notifies the manager immediately, and they follow the customer in to ensure who's actually consuming that beverage as a double check on top of the auditorium monitoring that we're required to do by the CABC. Alternatively to that, we have 2 different training programs that all of our alcoholic beverage staff goes through. That's the California Lead Certification, which is certified by the CABC, and we also have an internal program called Cinemark Alcohol Standards, all of which have to be completed before any of our staff can perform any of the alcoholic transactions or sales or monitoring within our business. One of the things that I really wanted to point out that Steve had mentioned was that we are not trying to change the character of this theater. We know that we have a family-friendly environment. We want to maintain that family-friendly environment. As he pointed out, there are Chuck E. Cheese's and hundreds of restaurant chains across the United States that are fully capable of providing alcoholic beverages while maintaining that family-friendly nature, and we intend to do the same thing. We don't want to lose any customers by changing the character or the dynamic of what we're currently doing. We just want to keep up and give you guys the most luxury-filled, amenity-filled theater that we can for your community. beyond that, is there anything I'm not touching on? And so we're available if you have any questions. for
Thank
us.
you, gentlemen. Questions?
I have a question. You have a licensed bartender that serves alcohol, or can anybody that sells food sell alcohol?
California doesn't allow or doesn't offer licenses per se, but every alcohol staff employee will be identified by having a yellow lanyard as opposed to the red lanyards, which is our 18 and over staff. The yellow lanyard signifies that they have gone through that California ABC lead training and that they've gone through our Cinemark alcohol service standards training as well. So,
I have a question. I recently had a wonderful experience at the DMV, and so I was studying the alcoholic standards. I was wondering why the three alcoholic beverages, when for somebody who's 150 pounds, 2 beverages is all right, but 3 might put you over the .08.
so the 3 beverages that have been used in other locations, it's not a standard that we have used. At least not that we've used or that we're proposing to use in this location. Some communities have put that in certain SUP or CUP situations. We train our employees to notice the signs of intoxication and inebriation and to cut off sales at any point if they see any sort of signs of impairment in any way, shape, or form, because of the fact that we want to make sure that we are offering that family-friendly nature within our auditoriums. That's why we have the checkers that go into the auditoriums no less than every 30 minutes, and it's not an ancillary kind of glance around the side. They're required to go up to the top in each row, looking down each row and monitoring the behavior of all of our guests within the auditoriums, as well as our bar staff that's at the concession stand that's there to notice signs of impairment and cut off sales prior to that happening.
So a husband couldn't come in also and buy a drink for him and his wife. She'd have to be there also, right?
According to the California ABC, you can sell 2 drinks per transaction to satisfy that husband selling or for both him and his wife. Now, we have several locations throughout the state of California that only allow for 1 alcoholic beverage per transaction, and we'd be happy to do whatever you guys are more comfortable with.
Thank you.
Can I follow up? I recently, this weekend, I went to the movie theater, and it was busting at the seams. The lines were long. There were 3 people taking in, tickets. I think you can take up to 6, but and there were a lot of kids there. And you also recognize that. Is there a mall in Hesperia where this theater is located?
The Hesperia Theater is not ours, so
I don't think so. I don't think it's a mall there.
Apple Valley does have a mall that's attached to it, and that's the theater that we operate that's close to here.
Jess Ranch?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we have a young population that's at the mall where this theater is, and in spite of that, I think you're doing well, and so I just want to bring that to your attention.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Just one question. Excuse my voice. Every time
That time
this
of year,
yeah.
everybody's going to come down with a little
Yeah,
bit.
every time this year it changes. I start losing it. But as far as, because you had talked about it's maybe it's not my voice. Okay, you had mentioned about the increase in revenues. Okay, so as far as from the studies that were done, has the ability to to sell alcoholic beverages really increased the movie goers coming to the
Are you talking about the attendance?
yeah.
It's difficult for us to say because a lot of the times when we implement alcohol sales, it's also along with other things like luxury loungers. So to say that alcohol added X percentage or that the luxury loungers did, it would be a difficult thing. In the locations where we've added alcohol only, there's been a nominal increase, but the benefit that we see most often is staying current with competitive theaters in the area to retain attendance as opposed to losing it to other areas that might have, or other theaters locally that may have better amenities.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did want to expand on one other point there. We do our alcohol sales out at the concession stand. We don't do it inside the auditorium. Obviously, one of the proposal is that be your community standards. The benefit of that is that it allows us to get a really good visual of the individual that is asking for the beverage there, and we have more management staff, and so we're able to monitor the purchase and sale transactions that much more closely as opposed to having it done in an auditorium. So that was another point. It's a control measure so that we can really monitor the activity much more closely.
Okay, I have a few cards here of people who'd like to speak. First card I have, in no particular order, is Sandy Gayton. I would ask that during public comment, as typical, we refrain to the 3-minute time. Thank you. Go ahead. Hello.
Hello, my name is Sandy Gayden, and I am a member of Friday Night Live at Adelanto High School. We also go by FNL. A member and I have come to you today to show our opposition of alcohol in our local theater. The reason we cannot have support to this is due to the negative effects of alcohol. Having this substance in our theater will threaten lives in the community. Alcohol encourages violence and other negative behavior. This results in making our mall unsafe. There is already not enough alcohol-free places for the youth to go to. We hope you take this issue with great consideration for the youth when proceeding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nina Dorado.
Good afternoon. My name is Nina Dorado, and I understand the plight of the movie industry, but I don't believe alcohol is a good answer to this dilemma. The mall is where our young people are hanging out. This would send them the message that movies and alcohol should go together, and they don't. If somebody can't spend 2 hours watching a movie without alcohol, then they have a problem already. The alcohol industry is about profit, not people, and as it stands now, 80,000 people die every year due to drinking. Many of them didn't have a drink. The 2015 San Bernardino County Community report indicates that there was a 10% increase in alcohol-related accidents between 2013 and 2014. That was the most recent one that I could find. Selling alcohol to movies may be a trend, but it has absolutely nothing of substance or value to add to this community. I have learned that even as a teenager, that teenagers have no way of finding ways around the system and around the safety protections that we put in place for them. And so that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Talisha Williams.
Sorry, I too also have a cold. Takesha Williams. I did just want, I don't know how this really goes, but the two places that you mentioned were shopping centers, not our mall. I'm a mother. I send my children to the mall. I'm comfortable with dropping them off and saying, we have barriers, stay within here. But as soon as someone who's drinking alcohol from that movie theaters reaches the 3 limit, comes into that mall, acts out, my children are now in jeopardy. So it's not only just the movie theaters, but it's the mall as well. So I am someone who would love to take out a movie time with my husband and enjoy that wine, but only in an adult setting, in an adult movie, rated R, not where my children get to watch Disney movies 2 feet away from an area, and then someone staggers in because they cannot control their alcohol. Then they get in their car at 12, because that's when you stop selling alcohol, and then my children who are waiting for me or other children who are waiting for the bus decide to walk home or walk to the local store or the Jack in the Box, get hit because that person decided to get in their car from their 3 limit alcohol that they thought they could handle. So before you do pass this law, please consider that how much price do we put on a good time when it's our family?
Vicky Mack.
My name is Vicki Mack, and I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Victorville, and I'm here to address the question of whether to permit an environmental exemption amendment of the municipal code to conditionally allow the sale of alcoholic beverages for on-site consumption in movie theaters and specifically at the Mall of Victor Valley Cinemark Theater. I'm here to advocate for the selection of option A of the staff recommendation, which is adoption resolution number P-18065, that the City Council deny the code amendment portion of Plan 18-0003 and deny without prejudice the conditional use permit. This is a larger consideration at stake than one entity's profits or following national trends. And I will begin by stating the obvious. The city is beyond saturated with alcohol vendors, and it has created a condition which has contributed significantly to the deterioration of the quality of life in this community. Community service organizations, first responders, the justice system, healthcare institutions, all work every day, all day, to try to mitigate the collateral damage of alcohol and other substance use, misuse, and abuse. It is hard enough to stave off the disappointment and disillusionment when there seems to be more losses in this battle than wins, the evidence of which we can see everywhere we look, including in and near the movie theater. How to stay encouraged in this when those who we need in this battle most, those that run the city, would work directly against us by permitting one more contribution to the already existing problem. The only answer when you already have more than you can handle is no. We have more alcohol flowing in this city than we can handle. And this is why I am asking the Planning Commission Council to recommend the denial of the conditional use permit.
Thank you. I have a card from Linda Titus.
Good evening. My name is Linda Titus. I am a resident of Victor Valley and also a member of the High Desert Coalition and a number of other organizations. I am also a healthcare provider here in the High Desert. My concern is regarding the harm and the need for the reduction of alcohol consumption and safe drinking here in the High Desert. We have alcohol sold just about on every corner and oversaturated in many towns and area. And I know that we have a need for businesses here in the High Desert. But in other cities, they have beverage centers that are monitored closely, and that the amount and the days of the week and the hours in which alcohol is sold and distributed is monitored. We have a system here where our vendors at the liquor stores can go to stores like Costco, Smart and Final, and buy any number of quantities of alcohol and put it on their shelves and in their ice machines and vending machines and whatever, and sell without any monitoring system at all. We have a problem with ABC being able to train and monitor here in the High Desert. We don't have that luxury. And when it comes to our teens do not have YMCAs, YWCAs, boys clubs, or other places to visit. They hang out at our Victor Valley Mall. Jess Ranch services a different environment. I live near that area, so I know it's a predominantly adult attendance at that theater. But here we have a mall, and this is where our children hang out. When we're looking at alcohol and safe drinking, there's some real planning that has to take place. We talked about females. We as females, we cannot drink the same quantity of alcohol that men do, regardless of our weight, because we don't have the enzyme to break it down like men do. In terms of safe drinking, you need to plan for transportation. You need to get out with a friend and decide who's going to drink and who's not going to drink, who's going to provide the transportation home. When we have individuals that are pouring our drinks, no matter what setting it is, I've been at food grills at other theaters, and those drinks and food are closely monitored by those servers, and they are there to say, okay, you're cut off, this is the size, this is the amount, this is the time. Some individuals don't know that they need to eat first. And coffee doesn't sober you up. That is not the answer. Some individuals come with the alcohol already on board. They've been drinking at home prior to coming to the theater. To assess that from a visual standpoint, as a healthcare provider, I know that that's really impossible to do. And there's a lot of responsibilities that go along with being able to consume alcohol and keep your bodies nice and healthy, you know, in terms of taking vitamins and exercising and a lot of other things that allow your liver and your kidneys and your heart and your lungs to be able to manage alcohol consumption. So I would say, let's give this some great consideration given our current environment and the fact that we do not have another environment for our teenagers to frequent and feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all the cards that I have for item number 1. So I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and I'll bring it back to this commission for deliberation and decision. Just as a reminder for the commission, we have 3 options, which is recommend denial. We have option B, which is a CUP with special requirements for just beer and wine. Option C, beer, wine, distilled spirits with special requirements. In the resolutions, they do have the operational conditions. And just a reminder for the commission, should anybody make a motion, there are a few other optional standards that may be appropriate by the Planning Commission, should the Planning Commission decide one of these options. I don't know if there's any questions on those or feelings on those extra conditions.
I have a couple comments. You know what? They've kind of changed theaters where there's more eating than just a hot dog and items you can. And there's a competition thing. The other cities have theaters with some alcohol. So I feel that they've done everything to help situation, that they didn't ask for distilled alcohol, hard alcohol. So I'll make a motion for option B. The environment assessed recommend the City Council find the proposal exempt pursuant to section 15061B and section 15301 existing facility, and adopt resolution number P-18-065 recommending City Council approval of code amendment portion of case number PLAN 18-00033, allowing beer and wine only, and adopt resolution number P-18-066 recommending City Council approval of the conditional use permit portion of case number PLAN 180033, subject to the attached conditions of approval.
Second.
Clarification, there are optional standards in the resolution. Would those be included?
Yes.
I have a second motion on that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Hoover with a second by Vice Chair Porter to approve option B, approving plan case PLAN 18-00033, recommending to the City Council the sales of beer and wine only. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carries with Commissioner Dew and Commissioner Marsh opposing.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2, staff report, please.
Thank you, Chairman Kurth. Item number 2 is case PLAN 18-00044. It is a general plan amendment and zone change to reclassify property from IPD Industrial Park District to C2 General Commercial on 2 vacant parcels located on the northwest corner of Dos Palmas Road and Park Avenue with an environmental exemption. The applicant's requesting this change on a site that's currently vacant. The gross acreage is a little over an acre in size. Currently, as you can see in the graphic here in front of you, it does have the majority of Dos Palmas is currently zoned C2. There is 3 parcels to the west of this site that would maintain an IPD zoning. But the applicant feels that they could develop the site at some point in the future with a more office retail component than the IPD would allow for. Given the fact that there's other general commercial zoning in the area, staff supports the proposal, and we're here and available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions before we open the public hearing? Seeing none, I will open up the public hearing. Is the applicant representative here?
Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission and this planning staff and all of the other city officials that are here, thank you for this time to present my case. My name is Bob Newberg, and I'm the owner of the 2 parcels covered by this zone change request. And over 30 years ago, my dad and I were looking for land to develop into small, light industrial and commercial buildings. And after months of searching, we purchased 7 lots in this IPD district in Victorville. And on completion of our purchase, we began construction of 3 nearly identical buildings located on Dos Palmas, Tamarack, and Shalem Road. And in 1989, I sold. That's not me stuttering. I know I'm nervous, but that's not my knees knocking, I don't think. 1989, I sold a building located on Dos Palmas, and that's visible right here on this graphic. It is just one lot separated going east or west, rather, on Dos Palmas from our site, and I constructed that building as well, but I sold that in 1989. But I still own and manage 2 other buildings, one on Shalem and one on Tamarack in the area. And as long as I've owned these buildings and been involved up here, there have been many more inquiries for businesses that require commercial zoning than for IPD zoning uses. Because of this demand, in 1988, I applied for, and the City Council approved a zone change covering one of our 7 lots. And this lot was located, or it is located, on the, it's on the southeast corner of Tamarack and Amargosa. That location really justified this change due to the fact that it was nearly surrounded by C2 properties, as these subject lots are, and it had highway frontage on what amounts to a major arterial highway. And these two parcels that we have, we're discussing tonight, are in a very, very similar location. That is, they are far better suited to be, zoned in C2 and to attract commercial occupancies rather than attracting IPD occupancies. So, as stated in the staff report, the subject parcels are located on this corner of Park and Dos Palmas, and if this zone change from IPD to C2 is approved, it will facilitate future commercial development on this site, and it will be more feasible and viable on this site. And finally, I just want to thank Scott and the city planning staff for all the help that they've given me, and the time and the help that we've had to get this to this point. And I'll still like you, Scott, even if they don't agree with your recommendation to approve. So, anyway, thank you very much, and I'm open to questions, from any of you.
If this was approved, are you planning on actually building yourself in the near future? I'm
not. I'm older than I care to admit, but I've been in this business about 40 years. And I now live in San Luis Obispo, California, and I'd love to be in a position to come up here and develop this, but due to those constraints, and also right now, really it's for my business model, which I'm basically a speculative builder. Those 3 buildings that we built that I referred to, we did not have tenants lined up, and we were just going on faith that this was a great location and we could build the kind of product that would have demand. And that was indeed the case, and that's been the case with most of the buildings that I've done over my career. But right now, to build a spec building is really prohibitive, mainly due to all of the costs of construction and the difficulty right now of construction, and getting permits and all of this. It just it does not make economic sense for an investor with on a pure speculative basis to come in and to try to develop something and just sit back and wait for tenants.
Understandable. Thank you, Mr. Newberg.
You bet.
Is there anyone else to speak to us on item number 2?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, city staff, my name is John Conley. I've been in the real estate profession, as has your chairman been, for a number of years up here. I represent Mr. Newberg, and I've represented him for about 10 years in this area. And as staff can attest to, and the chairman can, this has always been a dilemma, this area here, because we've all put tenants in there one or another, and it's been an area that we've had to get conditional use permits, because we've had attorneys in there, we've had realtors, we've had escrow offices, and a number of uses. This particular piece of property, when we met with Mr. Webb to discuss this, we felt because of the traffic flow at the traffic signal there as you're turning east on Dos Palmas, that it was going to be the traffic flow would get to Kaiser Hospital or the clinic there, as many other commercial entities there. So we thought it made sense, and when we sat down with Mr. Webb to discuss it, he thought, well, maybe there's a possibility. There has been so much interest in that piece of property for commercial development. The most, really, which was Rancho Motors. Rancho Motors wanted this piece of property about 4 years ago. And as a result of it being in the IPD district, they weren't going to be permitted to do what they wanted to do. We've had restaurants inquire there, and the biggest dilemma we've been faced with is the type of structure that can be built there and the use in that structure. Now, I will say that Mr. Kurth has been fortunate on the other street to build a beautiful facility, and that he was part of. Is not necessarily an ownership, but represents the owner. And it's a nice structure, but we thought this area, being right across the street on the south from Commercial, east Commercial, and at that intersection, it just made the most sense to rezone that commercial for development. And as I've said, most of the interest in that has been for commercial development as opposed to industrial park district. Thank you. If you've got any questions, I'll take questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for agenda item number 2? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
On the general plan amendment. Adopt resolution P. Recommending City Council.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Porter with a second by Commissioner Dew to approve case PLAN 18-00044, recommending City Council approval as conditioned. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Approved. Thank you. Moving on to item number 3. This was on our agenda last month, and it was continued. And once again, the parties are asking for a continuance of this item, actually until February meeting. But with that said, before we vote to continue this item, I will open up the public hearing. And I do have a couple of comments here on item number 3. Douglas Shermack?
Good evening. I don't have much to say. I was here on behalf of Laborers International Union of North America. We submitted the letter yesterday and then a revised version today, which I believe is the immediate cause for the request for the continuance. And I'm here and I wanted to say that we support the continuance to examine the issues raised in that letter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a card from Jimmy Elrod.
Hello, commissioners, chairman, staff of the city. First and foremost, I would just like to say thank you for the service that you provide to the city of Victorville. My name is Jimmy Elrod. I'm a representative with the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters, covering about 10,000 members that reside here in the Inland Empire, a few of which are with me tonight, most of which reside here in your city of Victorville. And so, like the previous gentleman said, don't have a whole lot to say. Wasn't anticipating that there was going to be a continuance on this. But we strongly commend you, to make sure that this project is fully analyzed and that the proper measures are taken to ensure that it's not going to have a massive negative impact on the land and the environment.
Okay. Thank you. Once again, it looks like this is projected to be continued. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the commission? Okay, seeing no one, then I'll close the public hearing. Nope, I'll leave the public hearing open. And I will make the motion to continue this item to the February 13th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting.
Second.
We have a motion by Chair Kurth with a second by Commissioner Hoover to keep the public hearing open and continue case PLN 17-00028 to the February 13, 2019 regular Planning Commission meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to number 4, same thing. This is a 5th continuance, working out a Caltrans issue on On item number 4, I will open up the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to us on item number 4? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. I will not close the public hearing. Last 2 in a row. I will leave the public hearing open and make a motion to continue this item to the Planning Commission's December 12th, 2018 meeting.
Second.
We have a motion by Chair Kurth with a second by Commissioner Marsh to keep the public hearing open and continue case PLN 17-00031 to the December 12th, 2018 regular Planning Commission meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Item number 6, staff report, or number 5, staff report, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. Agenda item number 5, PLAN 1840. It's a site plan and conditional use permit with an environmental exemption to allow for the construction of a new wireless communication facility that includes a 75-foot tall monopine and an associated base station on a developed M2 heavy industrial zone property. It's located at 17099 Gasline Road. Staff supports the monopine proposal as conditioned, with the suspension of the utility undergrounding and with the installation of the drive approach. The applicant inadvertently submitted incorrect plans, and staff would like to clarify the height of the monopine. It is 75 foot to the top of the antennas and 80 foot to the top of the pine, as you can see from the revised graphics submitted tonight, this evening. Staff is available for questions.
Staff? I'll open up the public hearing. Is the applicant here to speak to us?
Yes, good evening, Chair Kurth, members of the commission, staff. My name is Mike Blackwell. I'm here on behalf of Denali Wireless, and we have received a copy of the staff report and resolution and understand it, and would like to expand a little on the oversight on the exhibit. So the original plans that were submitted for prelim review were resubmitted for the actual review inadvertently. The project actually entails a multi-carrier facility just like you see in your exhibit now. However, the finished height would be 80 feet. That would be 75 to the top of the structure, and then 3 to 5 up to 5 feet for the branches that are installed and in position so that it has the most natural look to it. The facility is actually, the anchor tenant would be Verizon Wireless and not Sprint as shown in the photo sims, but the sims are accurate and depict an 80-foot tower. So that part of the visual representation of the project is accurate. The facility will be designed to accommodate up to 4 carriers, so it's a multi-carrier facility which helps to reduce the proliferation of vertical elements in town. The uppermost position would be utilized by Verizon Wireless, and at the base there would be space for 4 carriers' equipment, all the ancillary equipment, cabinets, radios, racks, and a generator or 2. So that space would be designed, everything's stubbed up, so it's just a plug and play. So there'd be no necessity to remove the tower, as you've maybe seen in the past, where a co-locator would come in and because of structural deficiencies would be forced to remove the tower and put a new one in or enhance the footing, so much so that it could even impact the aesthetic quality of the vertical element. We've read through as I had mentioned, the staff report and the conditions both for the conditional use permit and for the site plan, and have some concern over just 2 of the conditions in the site plan. That would be planning condition number 6 and fire condition number 26. Planning condition number 6 is requesting or conditioning the project with a CMU block wall. And in this case, we feel that we're going to be improving only approximately 100 feet, if my math is correct, 96 to 100 feet of new fencing at one side of the equipment compound, while the other 3 sides we would utilize the existing fence material that's there, and I believe it's a decorative chain link type fence. That portion of the facility would not be visible from the public rights-of-way, and so the burden and the amount of cost and time that it would take to install that wall, it's really something we feel would not be really necessary. If the intent is to add a visual barrier to the equipment. Further, the property owner is not supportive of a new block wall in the back. They want it nice and open and visible for security reasons and just be able to see what's happening back there. It's an improved property that's got another business on site, primary use, and there's parking, et cetera, in the back. Fire condition number 26 is requiring, it's a code requirement for a 26-foot wide access for fire. And the property is served by an access road now, a driveway that's approximately 20 feet plus, but it is paved up to the property line. And so we're really limited by the constraints of the property. We've got some buildings and we've got some fence line that exists there. On one side of the interior, which abuts another parcel, we've got a long stretch. As you can see in the site plan, our access is a long stretch, and then the back of the place is sort of a flag lot, and the back portion opens up. So we're really limited to that, just that drive aisle, that improved drive aisle that's there now, which is in relatively good condition. There was a discussion with staff about which relates to the suspension agreement, which is why this project was, our request to continue occurred last meeting. And we wanted to examine the suspension agreement and just so we had an understanding of what we were getting into in terms of possible requirements for infrastructural improvements. So to tie into that driveway, we are happy to install a new drive aisle and apron. It's approximately 30 feet wide, which would be just the apron itself and the connection, the sidewalk connection on both sides up to the property line. And the report reflects that. The suspension agreement would not be in place for that. I believe it was Public Works that asked that remain, and we have no objection to that. And the suspension agreement, which we would appreciate you supporting that suspension agreement for the utility portion of it. We're a leasehold on somebody else's property. We do have a long-term agreement with the property owner, and we anticipate that we would operate and maintain the facility accordingly. And I don't anticipate any, nor do I know of any future development on the property in the near term, but that could change. As I had mentioned, the facility will accommodate up to 4 carriers, each with, our site plan shows about 12 antennas per, so that would be the upper limit. None would extend above the top portion of the tower. The tower is designed to accommodate 3 additional below. And we are proposing, which I believe is in the report, faux bark, which would be an artificial bark that would be cladded onto the tower up into the bottom of the canopy of the faux branches at about 20 feet. So that would be visible. And the branch density is a medium, or actually a dense. So this manufacturer no longer produce light density trees. Because lots were coming back with redesign, jurisdictions were asking for more branches, higher density, which was kind of a slippery slope because we ended up with too many branches and it really created a solid block massing look, almost like a pipe cleaner. So we wanted some balance and open branching. This particular project, though, hasn't been requested by staff. I just wanted to let you know that it's got what we'd call a dense branch density of approximately 2.6 branches per linear foot, which is pretty decent. And it still allows for open air, as close to natural look as possible for a telecommunications tower /faux tree. Other than that, we have no other concerns, and the staff report was well put together. We enjoyed working with staff. They were very professional and treated us very well. And I'd like to answer any questions, address any concerns you might have.
Just to be clear, Are you okay with the conditions as we're seeing in our staff report in the resolution, if it was approved?
Well,
or are we
Les,
asking tonight to make any kind of amendment?
well, I am requesting that condition number 6, site plan 6, be removed or amended to reflect chain link fence to tie into the existing. And fire condition number 26, and I do have some suggested language if you'd indulge.
Before you do that, I was just going to ask staff what your take would be on these two conditions.
Sure, I believe what the applicant was referring to was a standard conditions that we normally place on a wireless facility for a block wall screen. But it may have been some old conditions that he came across, because the condition number 6 is related to the suspension of the utility poles. The requirement to do a block enclosure is not included in the conditions. So if you see in the aerial in front of you, the site isn't visible from public view. You could see Gasline Road is on the west side there. So the facility won't really benefit from a screen wall. Since it's completely internal, so staff is aware, and we noted in the staff report that chain link is proposed, and staff is okay with that. As far as condition 26, as it relates to fire access, that is a standard fire condition. What I can offer is that we could sit down and meet with the fire department to go over the access requirement. Usually it's only required at the new facility. They're not making him retroactively fix all of the access issues on the entire site. But since we don't have a fire representative today, I wouldn't recommend that we modify the condition. But what we can offer as staff is to sit down with fire and go over options for access and see what's feasible and what isn't.
Okay. And so my printout was a little smaller than usual. Getting up there in years, my eyesight just isn't what it used to be. So that is condition number 6 that referenced the CMU block wall. But I do appreciate that clarification and offering. It just wouldn't be visible from the public right-of-way, a new block wall. And as far as the standard condition for fire, if the commission is inclined, my suggested language revision would be the condition would read this way. Interior, exterior fire department access roadway/fire lanes shall be required per fire department standard. Fire department access roadways providing access to the buildings in this project shall be a minimum of 26 feet wide, insert number 1, where possible given available space on the property, or as currently improved on the subject property and as approved by the fire inspector. And it goes on to conclude, if gates installed must comply with fire department standards, and that part's fine. Again, we are limited to what we've got to work with. We are paved right to the property line. We just have nowhere else to go. And so when we're all done with this, fast forward a few months from now when we're in construction, the inspector goes out, pulls the tape, and suddenly we're talking to the next door neighbor, and that could, who knows what's going to happen. That could just turn into a rabbit hole we'd just never find our way out of. So I would just, with hat in hand, ask that you would consider at least tweaking the language so we have something to work with, some better tools to work with when we go into construction.
It sounds like almost trying to get to the same point, but does staff feel that's too restrictive?
I don't want to speak for the fire department, but from my experiences, they only require the 26 feet along new project frontages.
Would any of this
around
be
the
new project?
facility,
Would this be
just around the facility. So I haven't seen them require an upgrade to an existing drive aisle that accesses the entire site. Mike was mentioning that it's 15 feet currently.
That's what the plans indicate is 15 foot, so there'd be no possibility for the 26 foot in.
Normally their one-way standard is 20 feet. But what I can offer is just having them, sit down with the fire department and go over exactly what the requirement is, because I have seen this only applied around the facility or where they're modifying drive aisles.
I certainly don't, and a lot of us don't have the knowledge and fire knowledge to change a fire condition to say, oh yeah, where extent possible, because I haven't even walked the site. I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Understand.
I do have faith in Mr. Webb and getting with the fire department to say, hey, which will probably end up being to whatever.
Well, I just wanted to get that into the record and to just to have something to reflect on later on. This is an atypical project. Our access to this commercial lot is a narrow drive aisle rather than the typical frontage that we're used to. So oftentimes we'll see standard conditions applied that aren't really applicable or warrant further discussion, maybe massaging. And I would, I feel that the Planning Commission could, at Planning Commission's discretion, make modifications
Got
as
a
appropriate.
question from Commissioner Dew on this.
No, I'm in your statement.
Any other questions for applicant? And I'll thank you and close the public hearing.
Thank you.
I'll bring it back to the commission.
Chairman Kurtz, find the project category exempt per CEQA section 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures, and adopt resolution number P18052, approving the conditional use permit portion of case plan number 1840, subject to the attached conditions of approval, and adopt resolution number P18053, approving the site plan portion of case number plan 1840, subject to the attached conditions approved, and that they meet with the fire department to work out condition number 26 in the building and safety condition with the width. I'll approve it with that condition. Staff and the fire department.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Hoover with the second by Vice Chair Porter to approve case PLAN 18-00040 as conditioned and with the modified meeting of fire staff and the applicant. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And thank you. Item number 6 is a review of the Draft Planning Commission rules and regulations.
I thought that they were very thorough, and I liked the fact that the
Of all the years I've been on the Plan Commission, I don't think I've ever seen.
Seen what? Yeah, we could tell.
Thanks. Thanks.
That hurt.
You're welcome.
I said, ouch, I think that hurt.
That hurt, yeah. It really hurt.
Yeah, I liked it. I think it makes a lot of sense to me. I was just looking at order of procedure on the hearings. We still have, I don't know if this is just because it may come back around or if it's because it's zoning administrator, but it's got the home occupancy permits in there.
I wondered about that also, and I actually did ask Scott, and I said, kind of like, is this still a thing? And he said sometimes it is a rare occurrence. It's possible, or is it out of the code?
Yeah, it is rare, but we do have a provision in the code that home occupations come before the Planning Commission when they're somewhat open to the public, where public is coming to the site. So we have standard conditions that they need to abide by if we approve them administratively. So yeah, 99% of the home occupations out there have just been approved administratively because they comply with the standards that are in a municipal code. But if we deviate from any of those standards, then it comes to planning commission. So, it would either come as a public hearing, or we have it line itemed separately as an agenda section, and that's how it was in the prior or the
Not
current
happen very
rules.
much, but if it does, there's now a place for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was just a typo after number 7 and then number 8 there.
Oh, yeah.
Number 11, I would like to see, just for future, after we're gone, presentation by commissioners, which we always do, but I like to add staff in there as well, because there's been plenty of times that staff can add, news items, upcoming events, etc., and I think staff deserves
Would you want that before planning commissioners' presentations or after?
Or is it all kind of an all-in-one thing?
Or
like
all-in-one, yeah.
Presentation
The
of,
way we kind of been doing it is we go down the road with the commissioners, and then anything of staff, and once in a while there is, so
Okay.
it doesn't matter to me
there's and staff?
unless anyone has preference.
Make it a single item?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what you're suggesting, I mean, as long as it complies with the Brown Act and we don't go too far afield, I don't see a problem with it.
Okay.
A nice touch.
I think that's all I had. Anyone else have comments or questions on the item?
Not going to say nothing.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to just give everybody a chance to take a look at it and kind of soak it in and see if anything jumped out at you. And this way we can clean it up and see if anything else comes to our attention, and we can have it nice and clean and ready to go next time if anyone has any more comments. I know it's kind of hard to also read it once, but the original ones were only about 8 pages long. We didn't go too far down the road. Now, I think we've also been, officially this changes it to changes it from Robert's rules to Rosenberg's rules, but I think by fiat of the city council a while back in a resolution, it's been Rosenberg's for some time.
Okay, well then I think we're ready to see it in December, right?
Yes, we'll bring it back with those changes, and then if there's any more that you see, just reach out to us, and we'll include those in the December version.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for your comments and catches.
In compliance with the Brown Act, as necessary for the Planning Commission to make time available for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on subject matter jurisdiction. Is there any one person here to speak to us? Seeing nobody, we will move on to the Commissioner's comments. We'll start with Commissioner Marsh.
Yes, Barbara Powers called me yesterday, and the burned out on 7th Street with the fence out to the street. She's having a lot of people are walking around the fence on the street, and she's really hurt. She's seen a couple people. That fence could be moved back a couple feet, and I don't see why not.
The root group brought that up as well, and we brought that up to code enforcement, and thereafter I saw signs that the sidewalk was completely closed. I think they have the fence out to the street. I'll bring it up to code enforcement.
I drove by it a couple of times, and to me, it could be set back a couple of feet so people could walk by between the fence and the curb. Because otherwise they walk on the curb and somebody could get hit, and then who's responsible?
We're hoping it'll be demolished by.
Is that what the plans are? Demolish it? Good.
Yeah, there's a bid walk on that property this week so that we can expedite the demolition. We've gone through all the process to have that demolished. We'll have them take another look at where the barriers are placed, but the building official determined that overhang that's coming off of the building, as it was described to me, any wind could blow it over. And so before they were walking under it, and we were afraid it would actually fall on someone, so we pushed them out. But so we just got to see if there's a little bit of room to push it back in until we can get that thing demolished.
Purdue?
Oh, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to state that the recent fires and ongoing fires that have cost people their homes, but more importantly, their lives, is not something that is taken lightly on anyone in California or in the nation for a fact. I think the work that we do and make sure that we safeguard our citizens and others, I think it's a tremendous responsibility. And as someone who's been on many boards and committees, I find that my highest honor has been to serve with my colleagues that take everything into account regarding every child, every family, and every person. And that is very striking for me, because as someone who served in the Air Force, and as my fellow Air Force personnel and military personnel knows, you don't get a choice. Military is not a democracy. Whenever they send you, you go. Whatever you're told to do, you do, unless it's unlawful. So with that kind of mindset, to be in a setting such as this one is an honor. Thank you.
I did remember I had one comment, too, regarding the city's new website. I had someone that was close to me went in and filled in the code enforcement complaint on a fairly major issue. Asked them how it went, and they received a response the next morning. Received it. It's been assigned to code officers, and so it was a real good response. Really quick too. So that's. Any questions or comments from staff?
Yeah, I just wanted the planning commission to be aware. So the Old Town specific plan that you recommend approval of, that's going to City Council next Tuesday on the 20th. Also, the variance for that sign at Arco on D Street was appealed, and that's also being heard at the 20th next Tuesday. We'll also be reaching out to you before our next meeting for those that are interested in iPads to go through some quick training. You'll still receive a hard copy of the agenda this next month, but we want to get you kind of cued into the digital iPad version and see how you like it. And if it's something that you're okay with, then we'll just email it to you.
I just have one additional comment, Chair Kurth. On December 1st at 4 o'clock is the city's annual tree lighting ceremony, so I'd like just to invite and ask the commissioners to mark their calendars for that so that we can see you there.
Well, then I'll promote my Christmas parade
December
1st also. Starts at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, okay.
The Wells Fargo Stagecoach is going to carry the Grand Marshal, is going to be Mr. and Mrs. Santa Claus.
I go.
No.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I know, it's hard. This weather.
You know, I don't feel bad, but
Yeah, it is.
Dryness, I think, the change of the seasons.
yeah, and this.
They say our seasons don't really change here, they do.